The battle-scarred earth ran red with human blood as the Zarentine's plasma weapons turned the last remnants of an army into smoldering, splattering gore. With the ruins of New York City crumbling under the insectoid alien advance, the alien warriors chattered in victory shrieks, knowing humanity's destruction was at hand. But not quite yet. Not while Jeffrey Holmes and his squad still drew breath. From the sewers and subway tunnels, the human resistance emerged, gaunt and haggard, but with a lethal grit in their eyes. Jeffrey led the charge, his rifle spitting defiance at the chitinous enemy. They had to reach that Zarentine command post. Those alien bastards had intel and supplies the humans needed to survive just a little longer. Plasma bolts sizzled overhead as they dashed across the blasted cityscape. Jeffrey dove into the rubble, his squad laying down covering fire. He came up firing, dropping a hulking Zarentine soldier that had flanked them. Green ichor sprayed from its wounds. They fought for each blood-soaked street, trading human lives for every inch of ground. Jeffrey roared in pain and rage as a plasma bolt took Hernandez, leaving him a charred husk. But the command post was just ahead. One last push. Jeffrey burst through the barricaded doors and found himself face to face with the Zarentine commander Vox. The alien's mandibles clicked with cruel laughter as it leveled its plasma rifle at Jeffrey's head. But Jeffrey was faster. He rolled right, feeling the searing heat of plasma pass inches from his face. Rising in a crouch, he emptied his rifle into Vox's thorax, the rounds ripping through the alien's exoskeleton. Vox staggered, dark fluid gushing from the wounds. It glared at Jeffrey with compound eyes filled with hatred, then collapsed against a console. As Jeffrey approached cautiously, the alien hissed its dying words. "Fool, you have won nothing. We came for the oceans, the compound we need. You only delay, the inevitable." Burdened with this revelation and the critical data they'd stolen, Jeffrey led the survivors back underground. In the dank confines of their hidden bunker, they learned of a desperate long shot. Project Goliath. Powered exoskeletons built from stolen Zarentine tech. Armor that could let them fight back on equal footing. But the suits were lost when the research facility fell in the first days of the invasion. It was a fool's hope, but the only one humanity had left. Failure meant extinction. Jeffrey gathered his remaining troops, knowing most of them wouldn't live to see the dawn. They had to cross a continent teeming with Zarentine, fight their way into the ruins of the facility, and bring the armor back. The suits were out there somewhere in the blasted ruins of a fallen human world, and Jeffrey would find them, or die trying. The fate of the human race hanging on this one last mission. Jeffrey gathered his team, his closest friends and brothers in arms. Mike, a mechanical genius who could hotwire a transport blindfolded. Liam, their eagle-eyed sniper. And Colonel Johnson, a grizzled veteran of too many battles to count. They commandeered an armored personnel carrier, its steel hull still bearing scars from the war. The roads were treacherous, littered with abandoned vehicles and Zarentine patrols. Jeffrey manned the turret, scanning for threats, while Mike coaxed the engine to keep running on spit and prayers. Somewhere near the ruins of Chicago, they encountered a pocket of human survivors holed up in a makeshift fortress of rubble and rebar. Desperation and suspicion lined the faces of the haggard defenders. Jeffrey didn't blame them. Trust was a luxury these days. He approached with his hands raised, Liam covering him from a distance. "We're not here to fight," Jeffrey called out. "We have information on the Zarentine, their weaknesses. We're willing to trade for supplies and intel." A tense negotiation followed, but in the end, a deal was struck. As a show of goodwill, Mike rolled up his sleeves and got to work on the settlement's sputtering generators, coaxing them back to life with his mechanical wizardry. It earned them some much-needed goodwill and a hot meal, a rarity in this bleak new world. They pushed on, the Rockies looming in the distance like jagged teeth against the horizon. The winding mountain roads made for slow going, and it was there that the Zarentine ambushed them. A plasma bolt slammed into their transport, sending it careening off the road. Jeffrey kicked open the hatch, smoke pouring from the engine. "Out! Everybody out!" he roared. They scrambled for cover among the boulders, plasma sizzling overhead. The Zarantine had the high ground and superior numbers. It was a kill box. "We need to even the odds," Jeffrey growled. His gaze fell on a narrow canyon off to their right. A desperate idea began to form. "Mike, Liam, with me. Colonel, lay down suppressing fire." They dashed for the canyon, plasma scorching the earth at their heels. Jeffrey lobbed a grenade at the aliens to buy a few precious seconds. "Plant charges at these points," he ordered, marking the canyon walls. "We're going to bring the whole damn thing down on them." It was a risky ploy, but they were out of options. They set the charges and ran like hell, the timer ticking down. The explosion was deafening, the shockwave nearly bowling them over. A wall of rock and dust consumed the canyon, and the Zarantine with it. They emerged from the debris choking and filthy but alive. Jeffrey clapped Mike on the shoulder. "Nice work with those charges." "Let's just hope we don't need to do that again anytime soon," Mike coughed, dusting himself off. As they scaled the mountains, picking their way through the treacherous passes, they stumbled upon something unexpected. Signs of recent human activity, boot prints, shell casings. They followed the trail to a hidden cave network and found themselves staring down the barrels of a dozen rifles. "Easy there," Jeffrey said, raising his hands. "We're human, resistance fighters." A man stepped forward, his weathered face sporting a ranger's tab on his tatty fatigues. "Captain Hawkins," he introduced himself. "You picked a hell of a place for a nature hike." Jeffrey sized him up. The man had a hardened look, the look of a survivor. "More like a mission. We're looking for a research facility, a place that might have something to help us fight back against the Zarantine." Hawkins raised an eyebrow. "Well, ain't that a coincidence? My people have been raiding Zarantine outposts all throughout these mountains. Seems we might be able to help each other out." It took some persuasion, but Jeffrey convinced Hawkins to combine forces. The resistance needed all the help it could get, and Hawkins' Rangers knew the terrain like the backs of their hands. They hit the Zarantine hard and fast, striking outposts and supply lines. During one raid on a comms hub, Liam lined up a shot on a towering alien barking orders. The thing's head exploded like a rotten melon. "That was for Hernandez, you chitinous fuck," Liam muttered. But the Zarantine were relentless. As they neared the location of the research facility, a desolate stretch of the Nevada desert, they intercepted enemy chatter. The bugs had found out about the exoskeletons and were sending forces to secure them. It was now a race against time. Jeffrey pushed them hard, driving through the night, running on stims and willpower. They had to reach the facility first. They just had to. But when they arrived, they found the place already swarming with Zarantine. The twisted metal ruins crawled with the insectoid soldiers, the whine of their plasma weapons filling the air. Colonel Johnson surveyed the hellish scene, stroking his grizzled jaw. "We're going to need a distraction," he said. "Something to draw their attention while a small team sneaks in to find those exosuits." "I'll lead the distraction team," Johnson said. He looked at Jeffrey, a knowing glint in his eye. "You and Mike are the most qualified to secure the package. We'll buy you as much time as we can." Jeffrey clasped the old soldier's arm. "Give 'em hell, Colonel. We'll be in and out." Johnson cracked a grim smile. "You just focus on your part, son. Let me worry about the bugs." With Liam and Hawkins laying down covering fire and sabotaging the Zarantine's heavy guns, Jeffrey and Mike slipped into the ruined facility, descending into its bowels in search of the exoskeletons. The place was a labyrinth of collapsed corridors and debris, the schematic they had only marginally helpful. Zarantine drones skittered in the shadows, their piercing shrieks echoing off the crumbling walls. Jeffrey and Mike fought for every inch, dodging plasma and returning fire. The close quarters made for brutal work, Jeffrey's rifle bucking against his shoulder with each shot, spent casings tinkling to the floor. "The vault should be just ahead," Mike panted, consulting the schematics. They turned a corner and there it was, a heavy blast door, sealed tight. Mike got to work on the lock, his hands flying over the keypad. "Whatever you're going to do it fast," Jeffrey said, his rifle trained on the corridor. "We've got company." A swarm of Zarentine drones burst from the vents, all vicious claws and snapping mandibles. Jeffrey opened fire, the muzzle flash strobing in the gloom. The drones kept coming, screeching, scrambling over the bodies of their fallen kin. "Mike!" Jeffrey shouted over the din of gunfire and alien screeches. "Almost there," Mike yelled back, sweat beading his brow. "Just a little more." Jeffrey's gun clicked empty. He slammed in his last mag, the bolt slamming home with sickening finality. The drones were mere feet away now, close enough to see the green ichor dripping from their jaws. This was it. This was how he died. But then, a miracle. The vault door hissed open behind him, and Mike let out a whoop of triumph. "We're in!" There, gleaming under the emergency lights, stood the exoskeletons, angular matte black armor, limbs infused with living metal musculature, helmets overflowing with sensors. They were the most beautiful things Jeffrey had ever seen. Without hesitation, he and Mike clambered into the suits, the armor closing around them like a second skin. As the HUD flickered to life before his eyes, Jeffrey felt a surge of power unlike anything he'd ever known. Suddenly, the Zarentine looked very small indeed. He picked up the nearest drone and crushed it like an aluminum can. "Come on, Mike," he bellowed. "Let's go introduce our friends to their new playmates." They burst from the vault like avenging demons, wading into the Zarentine horde with terrible purpose. Plasma bolts pinged off their armor as they crushed, smashed, and tore through the aliens. For the first time, Jeffrey felt like they were the ones to be feared. They fought their way to the surface to rejoin the others, and found them also clad in the miraculous suits. Together, they formed an unstoppable wedge, carving through the Zarentine lines like a hot blade through butter. But the aliens had one last, nasty surprise in store. A towering Zarentine mech, all grinding gears and sizzling plasma cannons. And there, visible in its cockpit, was a familiar silhouette. Vox's lieutenant, his eyes burning with vengeance. What followed was a titanic clash, a battle of gods. The mech was immensely powerful, its weaponry enough to level a city block. But it was slow, cumbersome. The humans in their new exosuits ran circles around it, peppering it with rockets and hammering at its joints. In a final desperate gamble, the mech lunged for Jeffrey, its colossal fist poised to crush him into paste. But Colonel Johnson was there, shoving Jeffrey aside, taking the full brunt of the blow. The old soldier crumpled, his suit mangled, blood pooling. But his sacrifice bought the others the chance they needed. Liam launched a salvo of rockets into the mech's exposed innards, and the monstrosity collapsed like a felled oak. Jeffrey scrambled to the colonel's side, cradling his broken body. "Why?" he whispered hoarsely. "Why did you do that?" Johnson coughed, a weak, wet sound. "Because you're our best hope, son. You're the one who's going to lead us out of this nightmare. Promise me you'll finish what we started." Tears stung Jeffrey's eyes. "I promise, I swear it." With a final rattling breath, Colonel Johnson, the toughest son of a bitch Jeffrey had ever known, slipped away. They gathered their fallen friend and the precious exoskeletons and began the long trek back to their people. Jeffrey felt the weight of Johnson's last words, the weight of the task ahead. They had the tools now, the means to fight back, but the hardest battles were still to come. The war was far from finished, but now at least they had a fighting chance. The trek back to Resistance HQ felt endless. Jeffrey's muscles ached from the constant strain of the exoskeleton, but he pushed on. They had to get these suits back to base. They were humanity's best hope. A crackle of static burst through their comms. "This is Settlement Echo 7. We're under heavy Zarentine attack. Please, if anyone can hear this." The transmission cut out in a burst of noise. "That's less than 20 miles from here," Mike said, his face grim behind his helmet. Jeffrey pursed his lips. They couldn't afford a detour, but he couldn't abandon those people. "We're going," he decided. "Every life matters now." They found Echo 7 in chaos. Plasma fire lit up the night sky as Zarantine troops swarmed the perimeter. Jeffrey's HUD highlighted weak points in the aliens' formation. Mike, take the north side. Liam, get to high ground and pick off their officers. I'll push through the center. Jeffrey charged, his exoskeleton propelling him forward with inhuman speed. He slammed into the first Zarantine, crushing its carapace. Two more lunged at him. He caught one by the throat, using its body as a shield against the other's plasma fire. A child's scream cut through the din of battle. Jeffrey turned to see a young boy, no more than 7, cowering behind a pile of rubble as a Zarantine warrior loomed over him. Jeffrey didn't think. He just moved. His armored fist connected with the alien's head, pulping it instantly. "It's okay," Jeffrey said, kneeling beside the terrified child. "I've got you. What's your name?" Ethan," the boy stammered. "All right, Ethan, stay close to me. I'll keep you safe." Jeffrey scooped up Ethan and sprinted for cover, plasma bolts sizzling past. He set the boy down behind a makeshift barricade. "I need to help the others. Stay here, okay?" Ethan grabbed Jeffrey's arm. "Don't leave me." "I'll be right back," Jeffrey promised. "I swear." He linked up with Mike, who was holding the line against a wave of Zarantine troops. "We need to push them back," Jeffrey shouted. "Give the civilians time to evacuate." They waded into the alien horde, their exoskeletons allowing them to match the Zarantine's strength and speed. Jeffrey's fists were a blur, each impact shattering alien limbs and armor. Mike fought at his side, a whirlwind of destruction. Liam's sniper fire rang out, each shot finding its mark. Zarantine commanders fell, sowing chaos in their ranks. As the tide of battle turned, a woman in a lab coat approached Jeffrey. "I'm Dr. Chen," she said breathlessly. "We need your help. We've been working on an EMP device to disable Zarantine tech, but we're missing a crucial component." "Where is it?" Jeffrey asked. "Zarantine Supply Depot, 5 miles east, but it's heavily guarded." Jeffrey made a snap decision. "Mike, Liam, get these people to safety. Take the exosuits with you. Hawkins and I will hit the depot." "Sir," Hawkins said, "the boy—" Jeffrey turned to see Ethan standing nearby, his eyes wide. "I'm coming with you," the child said, his voice trembling but determined. "It's too dangerous," Jeffrey argued. "Please," Ethan begged, "don't leave me alone again." Jeffrey sighed. "Stay close and do exactly as I say." They slipped into the Zarantine depot under cover of darkness, their exosuits' stealth systems masking their heat signatures. The alien structure was a maze of twisting corridors and pulsing biotech. "There," Hawkins whispered, pointing to a glowing canister. "That's gotta be it." As Jeffrey reached for the component, alarms blared. Zarantine troops poured into the room, plasma weapons charging. "Get down!" Jeffrey roared, shoving Ethan behind cover. He and Hawkins opened fire, their exosuits' enhanced reflexes allowing them to dodge incoming plasma bolts. A lucky shot caught Hawkins in the leg. He stumbled, crying out in pain. "I've got you," Jeffrey said, hefting his wounded comrade over his shoulder. "Ethan, stay close. We're getting out of here." They fought their way back to the entrance, Jeffrey carrying Hawkins while trying to shield Ethan from the worst of the carnage. The boy proved surprisingly resourceful, calling out enemy positions and helping navigate the twisting corridors. They burst out of the depot to find Mike and Liam waiting with the civilians. Dr. Chen quickly integrated the stolen component into her device. "We've got incoming!" Liam shouted. A Zarantine convoy bore down on them, led by a towering alien mech. "It's Vox's lieutenant," Jeffrey realized. "He's after the exosuits and the EMP." "I have an idea," Dr. Chen said, "but it's risky." They lured the Zarantine into a narrow valley, drawing them in close. At the last moment, Chen activated the EMP. A wave of energy washed over the aliens, shorting out their weapons and vehicles. In the chaos that followed, Hawkins saw his chance. "Get them out of here," he told Jeffrey. "I'll buy you time." "Hawkins, no!" But the wounded soldier was already moving, charging into the stunned Zarantine forces. His exosuit's systems flickered and died, but he fought on, taking down alien after alien with his bare hands. Jeffrey wanted to go back for him, but the Zarantine were already regrouping. He had to get the civilians to safety. With a heavy heart, he led the survivors away from the battlefield, Hawkins' last stand fading into the distance. They reached the Resistance HQ battered and exhausted. As Jeffrey handed over the exosuits and EMP device to the Resistance leaders, he felt a tug on his sleeve. It was Ethan, reunited with his parents but still looking up at Jeffrey with awe. Are you going to save us all?" the boy asked. Jeffrey knelt down, meeting Ethan's eyes. "I'm going to try," he said. "For you, for everyone we've lost. We're going to take our planet back." "Back!" Jeffrey's words hung in the air, heavy with promise. The Resistance headquarters buzzed with activity. Technicians swarmed over the exoskeleton prototypes, scanning and analyzing every inch. Dr. Chen's team worked tirelessly to reproduce the EMP device. Jeffrey stood before a holomap, studying the glowing red dots that marked Zarantine strongholds. "We hit them hard and fast," he said to the assembled squad leaders. "Multiple targets, simultaneous strikes. They won't know what hit them." Weeks of intense training followed. Resistance fighters learned to move and fight in the exoskeletons, pushing the suits to their limits. The day of the assault arrived with a tense electricity in the air. Jeffrey's squad dropped into the ruins of Philadelphia under cover of darkness. Crumbling skyscrapers loomed overhead, alien growths twisting through shattered windows. The Zarantine outpost squatted in what was once City Hall, a fortress of biomechanical horror. "EMP in 3, 2, 1. The device pulsed. Alien security systems went dark. Jeffrey's HUD lit up with targeting data as his squad surged forward. They breached the perimeter in seconds. Jeffrey's fist caved in a Zarantine warrior's chest. He spun, armor servos whining, and hurled the body into an oncoming group of aliens. All around him, exoskeleton-enhanced humans tore through the Zarantine ranks. A plasma bolt sizzled past Jeffrey's head. He turned to see a towering figure, Vox's lieutenant. The alien's mandibles clicked in challenge. They clashed in a blur of superhuman speed. Jeffrey's armor creaked under the alien's blows, but held. He countered with crushing force, denting the Zarantine's carapace. Just as Jeffrey gained the upper hand, alarms blared. Vents in the walls hissed open, spewing sickly green mist. His suit's sensors screamed warnings. Bioweapon detected. "Fall back!" Jeffrey roared. "Seal the area!" They retreated, dragging wounded comrades. Jeffrey's heart sank as he saw Ethan among those exposed, the boy's face already pale and clammy. Back at base, Dr. Chen delivered the grim news. "This virus, it's like nothing I've seen. Our only hope is to find the source." Jeffrey assembled his best. "We're going in deep," he told them. "Zarantine bioweapons facility. It's a one-way ticket if we fail." They moved under cover of night, exoskeletons cloaked. Alien patrols passed within inches. Finally, the facility loomed before them, a nightmarish tangle of flesh and metal. "Go loud," Jeffrey ordered. They burst from cover, guns blazing. Zarantine forces swarmed to meet them. Jeffrey saw Mike and Dr. Chen slip inside amidst the chaos. He turned his attention to the horde of aliens bearing down on them. Liam's sniper fire cut through the air, dropping Zarantine left and right. Then a plasma bolt caught him in the chest. He fell with a cry of pain. Jeffrey's world narrowed to the battle around him. His fists and feet were a blur, every movement precise and lethal. But for each alien he dropped, 2 more took its place. Warning lights flashed across his HUD. The exoskeleton's power core was failing. Fatigue seeped into his muscles. Then he heard Mike's voice over the comm. "We got it. Fall back." They fought their way to the extraction point, half carrying their wounded. Jeffrey's suit finally gave out as they reached the transport. He collapsed inside, utterly spent. As they lifted off, Jeffrey looked at his battered team. So many lost, but they had what they came for. A chance to save Ethan, to save them all. Dr. Chen was already poring over the stolen data. Jeffrey knew the war was a long way to go, but for the first time in years, he dared to hope. Hope. But the path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty. The resistance base buzzed with activity. In a makeshift lab deep underground, Dr. Chen hunched over a microscope, her eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. She scribbled furiously in a notebook, muttering to herself as she analyzed the alien virus. "Any progress?" Jeffrey asked, stepping into the lab. Dr. Chen looked up, her face haggard. "It's unlike anything I've ever seen. The virus adapts rapidly, mutating to resist our treatments." Jeffrey glanced at the isolation ward where Ethan lay, his small form dwarfed by the medical equipment surrounding him. The boy's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. "We're running out of time," Jeffrey said, his voice low. Dr. Chen nodded grimly. "I know. We're pushing the boundaries of what we thought possible, but—" She trailed off, her frustration evident. Jeffrey squeezed her shoulder. "Keep at it. We'll get you what you need." He left the lab, his mind racing. In the command center, he found Mike and Liam poring over holographic maps of the Zarantine stronghold. "How's the training coming?" Jeffrey asked. Mike looked up, his face etched with dedication. "We're ready. These new exosuits are incredible. If we can catch them off guard, we might just pull this off." Liam nodded in agreement. "I've been running simulations. With the right approach, we can punch through their defenses." As they discussed strategy, an alert flashed on the main screen. Encrypted transmission incoming. Jeffrey's pulse quickened. "It's Whisper." The message was brief, containing coordinates for a meeting and a warning. "Come alone. Trust no one." Jeffrey weighed his options. The intel Whisper offered could be crucial, but the risk was enormous. "I'm going," he decided. "But not alone. Mike, Liam, you're with me." Hours later, they crouched in the ruins of an old factory, their exosuits powered down to avoid detection. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, alien, moving with an unsettling grace. Whisper's mandibles clicked as it spoke, its voice a harsh whisper. "You came. Good. Time is short." The Zarantine unfolded a holographic schematic of the stronghold. "Here," it said, indicating a hidden entrance. "This will lead you directly to the bioweapons lab." Mike tensed, his hand hovering near his weapon. "Why should we trust you?" Whisper's compound eyes gleamed in the dim light. "Because I've seen what Vox plans to do to your world. This virus is only the beginning." Jeffrey studied the alien, searching for any sign of deception. "If we do this, you want safe passage off-world?" Whisper nodded. "My life for your intel. A fair trade, yes?" Back at base, Jeffrey outlined the new plan to his strike team. "We split into two groups. Mike, you'll lead the frontal assault. Draw their attention. Keep them busy. My team will use Whisper's intel to infiltrate through the hidden passage." The day of the attack dawned cold and gray. Mike's team moved into position, their exosuits gleaming in the early light. Jeffrey watched from a nearby ridge as they engaged the outer defenses. The sound of battle erupted, the whine of plasma weapons, the thunderous impacts of exosuits smashing through barricades. Zarantine troops poured out of the stronghold to meet the threat. "That's our cue," Jeffrey said to his infiltration team. "Let's move." They found the hidden entrance exactly where Whisper had indicated. Jeffrey's HUD lit up with warnings as they descended into the bowels of the alien facility. The air grew thick with an acrid chemical scent. They moved silently through twisting corridors, disabling security systems as they went. Twice, they barely avoided Zarantine patrols, pressing themselves into alcoves as the aliens passed by. Suddenly an alarm blared. They'd been detected. "Move!" Jeffrey shouted. They sprinted down the corridor, plasma bolts sizzling past them. They burst into the bioweapons lab. Liam took up a position by the door, his rifle cracking as he picked off pursuing Zarantine. Jeffrey's fingers flew over alien consoles, downloading data and collecting samples. "Got it!" he called. "Fall back!" They fought their way back through the facility, the halls now swarming with the Zarantine troops. Whisper appeared, gesturing to a side passage. "This way! Hurry!" They followed the alien defector, emerging into chaos. Mike's team had pushed deep into the stronghold, drawing the bulk of the Zarantine forces. Jeffrey activated his comm. Mike, we're clear. Hit them with the EMP. A pulse of energy washed over the battlefield. Zarantine weapons and defenses flickered and died. In the confusion, the human forces disengaged, falling back to their extraction point. As they lifted off, Jeffrey clutched the stolen data. They'd done it. Now, it was up to Dr. Chen and her team to find the cure. The battle was won, but the war was a long way to go. Jeffrey looked at his battered team, thinking of Ethan and all the others counting on them. They had a chance now, a real chance to turn the tide. The resistance base hummed with activity. In the makeshift laboratory, Dr. Chen hunched over a microscope, her eyes red-rimmed from endless hours of work. Jeffrey stood nearby, watching as she meticulously analyzed slide after slide of alien virus samples. "How's it looking, Doc?" Jeffrey asked, his voice low to avoid disturbing her concentration. Dr. Chen looked up, rubbing her eyes. "We're making progress. The data you brought back is invaluable. But this virus, it's unlike anything I've ever seen." Jeffrey nodded, his eyebrows furrowed. "Whatever you need, just say the word. We'll get it for you." As he left the lab, Jeffrey's comlink buzzed. The resistance leadership was calling an emergency meeting. He hurried through the winding tunnels of their underground base, nodding to fellow fighters as he passed. In the war room, holographic maps flickered to life, showing Zarantine strongholds across the eastern seaboard. General Hawkins, a grizzled veteran of the early invasion days, pointed to a cluster of red dots. "We've got a window here, people. The aliens are still reeling from our last hit. We need to press our advantage." Jeffrey leaned forward, studying the map. "What's the target?" "Baltimore," Hawkins replied. "Specifically their logistics hub. We take that out, we cripple their supply lines for the entire region." The room erupted in a flurry of planning. Jeffrey found himself poring over intel reports, selecting the best pilots for the mission. Mike and Liam were obvious choices. Their skill in the exosuits was unmatched. Days blurred into weeks as they prepared. In the training facility, Jeffrey put his team through grueling simulations. Sweat poured down their faces as they practiced breaching alien defenses, their movements becoming sharper, more synchronized with each run. Finally, the night of the assault arrived. Under cover of darkness, they approached the ruins of Baltimore. The once proud city was now a twisted landscape of alien architecture and crumbling human structures. Mike's voice crackled over the comm. "Vanguard team in position, proceeding with stealth approach." Jeffrey watched through his HUD as Mike's squad slipped past the outer defenses, taking out alien sentries with brutal efficiency. Liam's sniper fire sang out, each shot finding its mark with deadly precision. "Main force, move in," Jeffrey ordered. His exosuit whirred to life as he charged forward, leading the assault. They smashed through the perimeter defenses, alien alloys crumpling under the force of their enhanced strength. Inside the facility, chaos erupted. Jeffrey's fist connected with a Zarantine warrior's face, the alien's exoskeleton buckling under the impact. All around him, human and alien forces clashed in a storm of plasma fire and mechanical fury. Suddenly, a massive Zarantine commander loomed before Jeffrey. The alien's exosuit dwarfed his own, jam-packed with weapons. They collided with earth-shaking force, trading blows that would have pulverized unaugmented combatants. Jeffrey's suit groaned under the strain as he grappled with the alien. Warning lights flashed across his HUD. He was being pushed to the limit. Then, without warning, his systems went dark. An EMP pulse washed over the battlefield, leaving the human forces suddenly vulnerable. "Exosuits down!" Jeffrey shouted, struggling to free himself from the now-dead suit. "Fall back to defensive positions!" He stumbled out of the powered armor, grabbing a fallen Zarantine weapon. Around him, other pilots did the same, forming a desperate perimeter. "Hold the line!" Jeffrey roared, firing the alien plasma rifle into the oncoming horde. "Mike, Liam, if you can hear me, we need that backup now." For agonizing minutes, they fought tooth and nail, using every scrap of cover and salvaged weaponry to keep the aliens at bay. Jeffrey's arms burned from the recoil of the unfamiliar weapon, but he didn't dare stop firing. Just as it seemed they would be overwhelmed, a familiar whine filled the air. Mike and Liam burst onto the scene, leading a charge of reactivated exosuits. "Sorry we're late to the party," Mike quipped, his suit's mounted guns blazing. With renewed vigor, they pushed forward, finally securing the logistics hub. As the last Zarantine fell, Jeffrey surveyed the aftermath. The victory had come at a steep price. Too many good soldiers lay still among the rubble. As they regrouped, Jeffrey's calm crackled to life. Dr. Chen's voice came through, tinged with excitement. "Jeffrey, we've done it. We have an antidote ready for human trials." A spark of hope ignited in Jeffrey's chest. They'd struck a crucial blow against the Zarantine, and now they had a chance to counter the alien bioweapon. The war was far from finished, but for the first time in years, the scales were. The resistance base hummed with anticipation as Jeffrey gathered his elite strike team. Hardened faces looked back at him, each pilot standing tall in their exoskeletons. Mike stood at attention, his usual smirk replaced by steely focus. Liam checked his sniper rifle, fingers dancing over the controls with practiced ease. Jeffrey's voice cut through the tension. "We've trained for this. We know the risks. But what's waiting for us in that facility could turn the tide of this war." He activated a holographic display showing the layout of the Zarantine bioweapons complex. "Mike, your team hits them hard and fast here," he said, indicating the main entrance. "Draw their forces, keep them busy. My squad slips in through this maintenance tunnel." As the briefing continued, Dr. Chen burst into the room, her lab coat fluttering. "Jeffrey, I need to speak with you." In a quiet corner, she shared the latest results. "The antidote. It's working, but not as we hoped. Ethan's condition has stabilized, but the virus is still present." Jeffrey's eyebrows furrowed. "We push forward. Whatever's in that facility, we need it." Hours later, under the cover of darkness, Jeffrey's team approached the Zarantine complex. Their stealth exoskeletons hummed softly, mimicking the alien tech signatures. Jeffrey held up a fist, signaling a halt as a patrol passed nearby. The alien guards moved past, oblivious to the human presence mere feet away. "Clear," Jeffrey whispered. They moved forward, reaching the maintenance tunnel. As they slipped inside, the sounds of battle erupted behind them. Mike's team had engaged. Inside, the facility was a maze of twisting corridors and alien architecture. Jeffrey's HUD highlighted their path, guiding them deeper into the heart of the complex. Suddenly, an alarm blared. They'd been detected. "Move!" Jeffrey shouted. They sprinted down the hallway, alien shrieks echoing behind them. As they rounded a corner, Jeffrey skidded to a stop. Before them stood a nightmare. Zarantine shock troopers in hulking, bioweapon-enhanced exoskeletons. The creature's armor pulsed with sickly green light, tendrils of virulent matter writhing across their surfaces. "Open fire!" Jeffrey yelled, unleashing a barrage from his suit's weapons. The shots pinged harmlessly off the alien armor. One of the shock troopers lunged forward, its clawed hand raking across Liam's chest plate. The exoskeleton's armor crumpled like paper, alarms blaring as the suit's integrity was compromised. Liam stumbled back, firing his sniper rifle point blank into the creature's face. "I'll hold them off. Go!" Jeffrey hesitated for a split second, then nodded grimly. "We'll come back for you. I promise." They pushed deeper into the facility, the sounds of Liam's last stand fading behind them. Finally, they reached the central research lab. Zarantine scientists scurried about, their insectoid forms a blur of motion as they tried to secure their data. Jeffrey's team engaged in a frantic firefight, alien weaponry scorching the air around them. In the chaos, Jeffrey spotted the facility's power core. "Cover me!" he shouted, sprinting towards the pulsing energy source. Dodging plasma bolts, he reached the controls and began overloading the system. The core's hum rose to a deafening pitch. "Brace for EMP," Jeffrey warned. A wave of energy washed over them, temporarily disabling their own suits, but leaving the Zarantine tech dead and silent. In the sudden quiet, Jeffrey's team moved swiftly. They downloaded crucial research data and secured samples of the alien bioweapons. Just as they finished, a new alarm sounded. "Incoming reinforcements," one of Jeffrey's squad called out. Through the lab's viewing port, they saw a massive Zarantine force approaching, led by a towering bioweapon mech. Jeffrey's mind raced. They couldn't fight their way through that. "We need to fall back, now!" They retreated, fighting their way back through the complex. Jeffrey's heart ached as they passed the spot where they'd left Liam. There was no sign of the sniper. As they neared the exit, they linked up with Mike's battered assault team. Together, they provided covering fire for each other, inching their way to freedom. Plasma bolts sizzled past Jeffrey's head as they finally broke free of the facility. Behind them, the bioweapon mech let out an ear-splitting roar, but they were already sprinting for their extraction point. Aboard the escape shuttles, Jeffrey clutched the stolen data. They'd done it, but at a terrible cost. As the adrenaline faded, the weight of their losses settled on his shoulders. Liam was gone, along with too many others. Back at the resistance base, Dr. Chen and her team immediately began analyzing the new information. Jeffrey stood before a memorial wall, adding Liam's name to the too-long list of fallen heroes. Mike approached, his face grim. "What now?" Jeffrey's eyes hardened with perseverance. "Now we finish this. For Liam. For all of them. We're taking the fight to the Zarantine, and we're not stopping until Earth is free." Free. Jeffrey's words hung in the air as he turned away from the memorial wall. The resistance base buzzed with renewed energy, a stark contrast to the somber mood that had lingered after the costly raid on the Zarantine facility. In the makeshift lab, Dr. Chen hunched over a holographic display, her eyes darting between columns of data. Jeffrey approached, careful not to disturb her concentration. "Any progress?" he asked quietly. Dr. Chen looked up, dark circles under her eyes betraying her exhaustion. "We're close. The alien data it's incredible. Their bioengineering is decades beyond ours." She manipulated the hologram, zooming in on a complex molecular structure. "See this? It's how the virus attaches to human cells. With this information, we can create a targeted cure." Jeffrey nodded, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. "How long?" "Days, maybe a week. We're working around the clock." Leaving the lab, Jeffrey made his way to the training grounds. The rhythmic thud of metal on metal echoed through the cavernous space as exoskeleton-clad soldiers sparred under Mike's watchful eye. "Again!" Mike barked. "The Zarantine hybrids won't give you a second chance." Two soldiers engaged, their movements a blur of practiced precision. One feinted left, then struck with lightning speed, exploiting a weakness in his opponent's guard. Mike nodded approvingly. "Better, but not good enough. We need to be perfect." Jeffrey approached, observing the new combat routines. "How are they progressing?" Mike wiped sweat from his brow. "Getting there. These new tactics are tough, but they're our best shot against those alien freaks." A sudden commotion from the command center drew their attention. Jeffrey's comm link crackled to life. "Sir, we're receiving an encrypted transmission. You need to see this." Jeffrey and Mike exchanged a glance before hurrying to the command center. The main screen flickered with static before resolving into an alien face, a Zarantine, but different from the warriors they'd fought. Its features were softer, more expressive. "I am Sci-Fi," the alien spoke, its voice oddly melodious. "We seek asylum and offer information vital to your survival." The room erupted in shocked whispers. Jeffrey raised a hand for silence. "Why should we trust you?" he demanded. Cypher's compound eyes seemed to shimmer with emotion. "Because we have seen the horrors inflicted upon your world. We can no longer be part of this genocide." Hours of tense negotiation followed. Jeffrey paced the command center, weighing the risks against the potential rewards. "It could be a trap," Mike argued. Jeffrey nodded. "It could, but if they're telling the truth..." In the end, the decision was made. They would meet. Days later, Jeffrey stood in the ruins of an old military base, flanked by Mike and a squad of exoskeleton troops. The whine of alien engines filled the air as a sleek craft descended. The ship's hatch opened, revealing a tall, willowy Zarantine. She, stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I am Alara, emissary of Sci-Fi," she said, her voice tinged with an otherworldly accent. Jeffrey stepped forward, his hand resting on his sidearm. "I'm listening." Alara produced a data crystal. "This contains the location of every Zarantine staging ground on your planet, and something else, something that could turn the tide of this war." She explained the planetary defense system, its vast network of weapons now under Zarantine control. Jeffrey's mind raced with the possibilities. Back at the resistance base, plans were drawn and redrawn. Maps covered every surface, dotted with potential targets and choke points. "We hit them here, here, and here," Mike said, indicating the staging grounds. "Full assault, everything we've got." Jeffrey nodded. "While they're distracted, my team infiltrates the defense system's control hub. If we can seize it, we can use their own weapons against them," Dr. Chen finished, her eyes gleaming with possibilities. The base became a flurry of activity. Dr. Chen's team worked feverishly to mass-produce the cure, filling vial after vial with the precious liquid. In the armory, resistance fighters outfitted their exoskeletons with new weaponry, guided by Alara and her fellow defectors. Jeffrey stood before his assembled forces, a sea of determined faces looking back at him. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "This is it," he began. "Everything we've fought for comes down to this. We've lost friends, family, entire cities. But today, we take it all back." A cheer went up from the crowd. Jeffrey raised his hand, calling for silence. "Mike will lead the main assault. Hit them hard, hit them fast, keep them off balance." He turned to his own team. "We'll strike at the heart of their defenses, cut off the head, and the body will follow." As the resistance mobilized, Jeffrey took a moment alone. He thought of Liam, of all those they'd lost. The road ahead would be hard, but failure was not an option. "This ends now," he murmured, checking his weapon one last time. One way or another. Jeffrey's exoskeleton hummed to life as he led his team through the alien-infested wasteland. The eerie silence was broken only by the occasional crunch of debris under their feet. Mike flanked his right, while the rest of the hand-picked squad fanned out behind them. "Control hub dead ahead," Jeffrey whispered, his voice barely audible through the comm link. The massive structure loomed before them, its alien architecture a stark reminder of Earth's conquerors. Jeffrey activated his stealth systems, watching as his suit's surface rippled and blended with the surrounding environment. "Remember, we're ghosts," he reminded the team. "No unnecessary movements." They crept forward, their camouflaged forms nearly invisible against the backdrop of twisted metal and scorched earth. The outer perimeter defenses loomed ahead, dripping with sensors and weaponry. Jeffrey held up a fist, signaling a halt. He watched, breath held, as a Zarantine patrol passed mere feet away. The alien's insectoid head swiveled, scanning the area. For a heart-stopping moment, its compound eyes seemed to lock onto Jeffrey's position. Then, it moved on. "Clear," Jeffrey breathed. "Move up." They slipped past the outer defenses, finding the entrance to the underground access tunnels. The team descended into darkness, guided by the soft glow of their HUD displays. Suddenly, alarms blared. Red lights flashed throughout the tunnel system. "We've been made!" Mike shouted. "Defensive positions!" The air filled with the screech of alien weaponry. Plasma bolts sizzled past, leaving scorch marks on the tunnel walls. Jeffrey's team returned fire, their advanced weapons cutting through the first wave of Zarantine shock troopers. But more were coming. The narrow tunnel echoed with the thunderous footsteps of approaching bioweapon-enhanced exoskeletons. "We're pinned down," Jeffrey growled. "Mike, we need a diversion." Mike nodded, his face set with fierce concentration. "On it. Johnson, Martinez, you're with me." The three of them charged forward, drawing the brunt of the Zarantine fire. Jeffrey watched as Mike's exoskeleton took hit after hit, its armor barely holding. "Go!" Mike shouted over the din of battle. "Find another way in." Jeffrey hesitated for a split second, then turned to the remainder of his team. "This way!" They pushed deeper into the tunnel system, the sounds of Mike's desperate stand fading behind them. Jeffrey's eyes darted left and right, searching for any alternative route. "There," one of his squad members called out, a small maintenance hatch nearly hidden in the shadows. Jeffrey wrenched it open, revealing a cramped shaft beyond. "In, now!" They squeezed through, the tight space forcing them to move single file. The shaft twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the heart of the control hub. Jeffrey's breath came in ragged gasps as they emerged into a maze of service tunnels. The distant sound of Zarantine patrols echoed through the corridors. "Stay low, stay quiet," he ordered. They crept through the labyrinth, narrowly avoiding detection time and again. Jeffrey's heart pounded in his ears as they ducked into alcoves, holding their breath as alien patrols passed by. Finally, they reached the main operations center. Jeffrey peered around the corner, taking in the scene. Zarantine command staff bustled about, their chitinous forms hunched over alien consoles. Elite guards stood at attention, their bioweapon-enhanced forms towering over their masters. Jeffrey turned to his team, his voice a harsh whisper. "This is it. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Now." They burst into the room, weapons blazing. The Zarantine command staff screeched in alarm as plasma bolts tore through their ranks. The elite guards returned fire, their own weapons leaving molten holes in the walls. Jeffrey ducked and weaved, his exoskeleton systems pushed to the limit. He vaulted over a console, bringing his weapon to bear on a Zarantine guard. The alien's armor crumpled under the sustained fire. "Push forward," Jeffrey shouted. "Take those consoles." His team fought with desperate intensity, slowly gaining ground. One by one, the Zarantine fell. Jeffrey reached the central control panel, his fingers flying over the alien interface. "I'm in," he called out. "Transmitting override codes now." The defensive network came to life under his command. Jeffrey watched with grim satisfaction as orbital platforms unleashed devastating strikes on Zarantine strongholds. "Mike, you've got control of the ground-based weapons," Jeffrey reported. "Make it count." For a moment, it seemed they had won. Then a new threat emerged. A massive exoskeleton, far larger than any Jeffrey had seen before, stomped into the room. Its pilot, clearly the Zarantine's second-in-command, let out a bone-chilling shriek of challenge. Jeffrey stood to face him, his own exoskeleton battered but unbowed. "Keep them off me," he ordered his team. "This one's mine." The two titans clashed, their armored forms trading earth-shaking blows. Jeffrey's exoskeleton groaned under the strain as he barely deflected a crushing punch. He retaliated, his suit's servos whining as he delivered a devastating uppercut. The Zarantine commander staggered back, but quickly recovered. They grappled, locked in a deadly dance of advanced technology and raw commitment. Jeffrey's HUD flashed warning after warning as his suit systems were pushed beyond their limits. Just as Jeffrey thought he might gain the upper hand, the Zarantine commander's exoskeleton began to pulse with sickly green light. A wave of energy washed over the control systems. "No!" Jeffrey shouted as he realized what was happening. A virus, more advanced than anything he'd seen before, was tearing through the defense network's systems. In that moment, Jeffrey made his choice. His hand slammed down on the emergency shutdown, plunging the entire hub into darkness. As the lights flickered out, Jeffrey turned to his team. Their exoskeletons, now running on emergency power, cast an eerie glow in the darkened room. "Defensive positions," he ordered, his voice steady despite the dire situation. "We hold this room at all costs. Buy time for Mike and the others to finish this." They moved quickly, overturning consoles for cover as the sounds of approaching Zarantine forces echoed through the corridors. Jeffrey checked his weapon, the charge indicator showing less than half power. In the distance, explosions rumbled. The Resistance's counterattack was in full swing. Jeffrey allowed himself a grim smile. They just had to hold out long enough for it to succeed. Here they come, one of his squad members warned. Jeffrey raised his weapon, sighting down the barrel at the entrance. Remember, he said, his voice carrying to each member of his battered team, we're all that stands between Earth and annihilation. We hold, no matter what. The first wave of Zarantine troops burst through the door, and the final battle for the control hub began. The air crackled with energy as plasma bolts slammed into hastily erected barricades. Jeffrey crouched behind a fallen console, his exoskeleton's power indicator blinking ominously. Martinez, how's that ammo count? He shouted over the din. Running low, sir, came the terse reply. Maybe 2 clips left. Jeffrey cursed under his breath. He peeked over the barricade, squeezing off a burst that dropped an advancing Zarantine trooper. The alien's chitinous form crumpled, its weapon clattering to the ground. Chen, grab that gun, Jeffrey ordered. We need every advantage we can get. Chen darted out, snatching up the fallen weapon. She examined it quickly, her fingers dancing over unfamiliar controls. Got it, sir. The battle raged on, a relentless tide of Zarantine forces crashing against their defenses. Jeffrey's team fought with desperate intensity, their exoskeletons pushed to the limit. The control hub's emergency lighting cast eerie shadows, turning the room into a nightmarish landscape of twisted metal and alien corpses. Suddenly, Jeffrey's comm crackled to life. Mike, breaking through. Heavy resistance. Mike! Jeffrey shouted, straining to hear. Repeat your last! The transmission cut in and out, garbled by interference. Staging ground. Needs support. Being decimated. Jeffrey's mind raced. Without the planetary defense system, Mike's forces were sitting ducks. He glanced at the darkened control panels, an idea forming. Cover me! He yelled, sprinting towards the main console. His fingers flew over the alien interface, bypassing security protocols and rerouting power. What are you doing? Chen called out, laying down suppressing fire. Our only shot, Jeffrey replied grimly. I'm bringing the system back online for one last strike. The console hummed to life, alien symbols scrolling across the screen. Jeffrey's eyes widened as he read the warning message. Damn, he muttered. Activating the orbital platforms would trigger a self-destruct sequence. There was no way around it. He turned to his team, his voice steady despite the weight of his decision. Fall back to the central chamber. I'll cover you. Martinez stepped forward, shaking his head. Sir, we can't leave you. That's an order, soldier, Jeffrey cut him off. He locked eyes with each member of his team. Mike needs this strike to succeed. Someone has to stay behind to make it happen. Chen opened her mouth to protest, but Jeffrey silenced her with a look. Go. That's an order. As his team reluctantly retreated, Jeffrey activated his comm. Mike, it's Jeffrey. Listen carefully. I'm about to give you some fire support, but after that, you're on your own. The resistance is in your hands now. Don't let Earth down. He didn't wait for a response. Turning back to the console, Jeffrey began the arduous process of reactivating the orbital platforms. His fingers danced across the alien interface, bypassing firewalls and overriding safety protocols. Behind him, the sounds of battle grew closer. Zarantine troops poured into the room, their weapons blazing. Jeffrey spun, firing off quick bursts to keep them at bay. His exoskeleton systems screamed warnings as plasma bolts found their mark, searing through the armor. Just as the final sequence began to load, a massive form burst through the doorway. The Zarantine commander's exoskeleton dwarfed Jeffrey's, its eyes glowing with alien malice. You're too late, Jeffrey snarled, raising his weapon. The two titans clashed, their exoskeletons trading earth-shaking blows. Jeffrey felt his suit's servos strain as he barely deflected a crushing punch. He retaliated, his fist connecting with the alien's midsection. The fight was brutal and swift. Jeffrey's smaller frame allowed him to duck and weave, landing precision strikes against his larger opponent. With a final, desperate lunge, he managed to breach the Zarantine commander's defenses, delivering a crippling blow to its central power core. As the alien exoskeleton crashed to the ground, Jeffrey staggered back to the console. His own suit was in tatters, warning lights flashing across his HUD. With trembling fingers, he input the final command sequence. The room shook as orbital strikes rained down on the Zarantine staging grounds. Through the console's feed, Jeffrey watched as the alien fortifications crumbled under the barrage. He allowed himself a small smile of victory. Then the world exploded around him. The Zarantine commander's last act had been to trigger an explosive device. The blast tore through the control hub, burying Jeffrey under tons of debris. He lay there, trapped and broken, as the self-destruct sequence counted down. With his last ounce of strength, Jeffrey reached out, activating the final strike. As consciousness faded, he thought of Earth, of humanity's future. He hoped it would be enough.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.